Hello, we are live. Okay, hi. Hey, Amro, how are you? Okay, it is admin hour. I swear I'm prepared. Okay, hey, good, okay. So nice to see you. I am wearing my Trailhead gear. We are here for our second ever admin hour, and of course my computer is telling me I need to restart, so let me postpone that. Have to love computers, right? Okay, so we are here for admin hour, and the way this works is that I welcome you and I thank you for the hearts. You can tap the screen. If you're new to Periscope, you can tap the screen to give hearts. Just like that. Thank you. That's so nice. You can comment. If you are in the Periscope app, that's why I encourage you to join the Periscope app so that you can give live interactive feedback right here. And then we're also going to be on Twitter. So again, we're here, we're live for hashtag admin hour if you want more information about that. And I've also compiled a ton of resources for today. Thanks to all the great feedback I've been getting from the community. I really encourage you to go to longshoreconsulting.com/admin hour. In particular, there's a Trello board there that has a lot of great resources that we're going to be talking about today in terms of configuration basics and beyond. And one fun thing you can do on Periscope is you can even screenshot this to save it for later, which is super fun. And then a little fun camera icon will float up instead of a heart. So that's a super fun Periscope trick for you. So I also encourage you to follow me on Periscope if you have not already. And then I encourage you to tap the screen for hearts. And then I encourage you to swipe up on Android, swipe left to right on iOS, and share out this broadcast so that more people will see the Periscope in their Twitter feed. And then they can join us live here for all of the action, because obviously I can talk a lot faster than I can type, and we can make this as interactive as possible via Periscope. So please swipe and share this out with your Twitter followers so that as many people as possible can join us live. So how is this going to work? Hi, Amanda, welcome. So glad you're here. How's this going to work? We are going to have you invite all of your awesome admin friends. And this is really designed for if you are, thank you for sharing, Amro, I really appreciate you. We are going to, if you are a beginner or intermediate admin of Salesforce, or if you're just getting started, this is for you. We really want to share tips and tricks because I found there's so much out there for advanced administrators that there really wasn't a lot for more intermediate there really wasn't a lot for more beginner admins. So I wanted to just have a resource for that. Now, if you're an expert, you're in the right place as well because you can really help everyone. So what I want to encourage you to do as we're getting started is to follow everyone else. So there's a number of people. If you swipe on iOS or you swipe up on Android, you can see who else is on here, and people are Salesforce experts or they're Salesforce newbies, and they're people you really want to get to know in the Salesforce community. And I also want to encourage you to get to know the people who are on Twitter as well. So I can see that Melissa is on and she's retweeting, and I can see there's more of you because the Salesforce community has been the #1 way that I have learned and really advanced my Salesforce skills over time. So I really encourage you to do that. The other thing is our format for today. So I'm going to be posting a series of questions on Twitter. I'm looking at my computer, which is right next to me. So that's what's going on with that. And they're going to have Q1, Q2, all the way through Q8. And then I'm going to ask that you use A1, A2, etc. in your answers. And of course that you put in the hashtag admin hour in your response, because I have Hootsuite up here, and the only way that I'm going to see your reply, thank you for sharing, Riley, I really appreciate that. The only way I'm going to see your reply is if you use the hashtag admin hour, because that's what I have up. Hootsuite is a great free social media management tool, and it's one way that you can use, that you can see just a Twitter stream of this particular conversation, if that makes sense. So you can just search on the Twitter feed #admin_hour, but you can also do that on Twitter desktop. So our first question just came up, and that's introduce yourself. Your name, where you are today, one favorite thing about Chris Duarte, whose Twitter handle is @TheChrisDuarte. In case you don't know her, she is the editor-in-chief of Trailhead. So that's why I'm wearing my Astro Trailhead t-shirt today that she actually gave me in person a little over a year ago, or was it 2 years ago? A year ago, I think. When I was at a Trailhead training in person in San Francisco. I live here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And so in this particular response, I'm going to ask that you also use the #WeLoveChris, which you may have already seen some people using today on Twitter. So go ahead and talk about your name, where you are today, one favorite thing about Chris using the #WeLoveChris, and of course, make sure you include #admin_hour as well. So the other thing I'm going to ask you to do today is to go ahead and open up your Salesforce instance. So I completely love Trailhead. I completely love Chris Duarte. I did a funny morning scope this morning where I was talking to my Rice Krispies were talking to me and telling me how much they love Chris Duarte. And I think it's fantastic. But one of the things I wanted to do with Admin Hour is bring it to the next level and allow you to apply some of those concepts to your Salesforce instance. And I just wanted an opportunity for you to take an hour every 2 weeks and have, either the Periscope or the Twitter or both open, but then also open up your Salesforce instance and apply the principles we're talking about as we move along. So Amanda is with us. She's watching her first. That's awesome. Seattle Women in Tech is joining us. That's fantastic. Still looking for more introductions, whether you're on Periscope or you're on the Twitter feed. Please reply to the first question. We want to know who you are, where you're from, and then we're going to have another question popping up in just a second. So again, I want to remind you that we have our fantastic website. My name, let me introduce myself actually. I just realized I haven't done that. So we have our fantastic website. My name is Missy. I'm with Longshore Consulting. This is my 5th year of business that I just started. I work with nonprofits and foundations. So certainly if that's you or if you know someone who falls into that category, I hope you will refer them both to Admin Hour and to my website. I currently have a really great 7-day challenge up, which is sponsoring Admin Hour today. It's totally free and it's a really great way to build on what we did in Admin Hour last time. So go to longshoreconsulting.com, look for the 7-day challenge tab and sign up for that. Again, it's totally free. In 5 minutes a day, you'll be able to update your weekly data export. You'll be able to implement Salesforce duplicate prevention and report on reports, install the free data.com assessment app, and all of that, again, is completely free. I do 5 minutes a day in step-by-step video tutorials. And for that, I use a free tool called Jing, which I highly recommend as a way to help train your users and even respond to support requests. The other thing I want to point out is that the Success Community and the Power of Us Hub are fantastic resources for everything we're going to be talking about today. So that's one fantastic thing. Now, I noticed that you're all watching, but you're being a little shy. So what can I do to get you to participate? Well, we're going to roll into our first question here. And again, I want to make sure that you have your instance open and that you are that you have your instance and that you're ready to make some configuration changes. So we're going to start talking about that. And I also want to give a special shout out to some of our extra experts that we have on the line today. We have Melissa Van Dyke, who is fantastic. She's a Salesforce MVP, I believe, and she works with a lot of admins doing admin to admin stuff. So if you're here, Melissa, make sure you say hi and introduce yourself. We have Atul, who's coming from New Delhi. It's very, very late there, so we're really excited about that. And we have Rebe de la Paz, who I have not met in person yet, but she is also fantastic, and we're really excited that she's here to answer all your questions. So again, speak up, answer the questions. Let me go ahead and see. Amro is here. Amro Radwan. He's a Salesforce admin in San Francisco Admin Hour, and he got introduced to Chris Duarte. Fantastic. Yes, Chris is a fantastic individual. She's super fun, and she occasionally does shoe scopes on Periscope, and I did not know until recently that she had wore these green glittery New Balance sneakers at Dreamforce, and I was like, oh my gosh, those are so amazing. It wasn't until I went back to Salesforce recently to do a Trailhead training for Girlforce, which I'm on the leadership team of, and she told me that she bedazzled them herself. So in other words, there's like thousands of little like green gemstones on her green New Balance sneakers, and she bedazzled them herself one night. She's totally amazing. Okay, so our second question is up, and the question is, what configuration do you currently do in Salesforce? So I'd love to hear from you. What configuration do you currently do in Salesforce? So I really want this to be interactive. And I also wanted to talk for a little bit about what the difference is between customization and configuration. And I also wanted to talk about declarative versus programmatic, because when I was getting started, and I started with Salesforce in 2009 at the education reform nonprofit I was working at, and honestly for several years, none of this really made sense to me. And it's not super, super important. I think the most important thing is that you understand when you need to use what tools. So in other words, if you go to any sort of Salesforce training, or you do Trailhead or whatever, you will learn that they recommend that you use clicks, not code. So that's the easiest way that I like to remember things. And I'm going to grab my tea here. Apparently it's also National Tea Day. So there's always so much trending on Twitter. It's very interesting there. Okay, great. So we have Amanda saying Salesforce admin in Iowa. Fantastic. So glad you're here. We have Kellan from, I believe that's perhaps a Planned Parenthood, but not positive. I interned at a Planned Parenthood many years ago, so that's my guess. Nice to meet you all. Love Trailhead. Thanks. Fantastic. Make sure you follow on Twitter the people that are mentioning, that are tweeting, because they're going to be great resources for you for furthering your learning. Adam is here. He loves the power of workflow rules and the enforcement of data with validation rules. That's fantastic. So glad to hear that. I'm going to go ahead and retweet that. That's fantastic. And so glad you're here. I'm going to go ahead and favorite these other ones. Okay, so let's get back to our conversation about what is the difference between customization and configuration. Does anyone here on Periscope know the difference? I'm just curious. This is also, I posted some great articles on this on our Trello board, again, on our website. So again, focusing on clicks, not code. So I looked it up because I was curious. And just in case you're curious where these topics derive from, I conducted a survey of 100 nonprofit organizations, because that's who Longshore Consulting works with. And configuration and learning how to make Salesforce work for their nonprofit organizations was one of the top needs. So that's where this topic came from, but you're always welcome to suggest topics that we can work on. So what is the difference between customization and configuration? Jeff May, who I think may work at Salesforce now, I'm not sure. He says, usually those terms are used to separate the changes an admin can make using the Salesforce UI setup. User interface is UI, configuration, and the changes or features that require Visualforce or Apex, customization. It is always better to use configuration when possible and only use customization coding when absolutely necessary. Configuration is easier to understand and maintain, is harder to make a mistake that causes real damage, and automatically makes use of updates made by Salesforce. Customization is exactly the opposite of all that. In addition, you need special technical skills to write it. Each customization is unique, so only the author really understands it easily, although it can be figured out by other technical people. And when something goes wrong, it is really, really hard to know where the problem started. So I really enjoyed that explanation. And then also we have this great explanation by Sivanath. And he says, point and click configuration. Force.com Builder makes it easy to modify the functionality of Salesforce applications to meet your unique requirements. Working with the metadata framework and a series of simple point and click wizards, you can design custom user interfaces and modify the structure of the data model and the application's business logic. And then customize with code. Although point and click configuration with Force.com Builder is the fastest and easiest way to customize, some functionality is beyond the constraints of a metadata framework. For such cases, developers can create needed functionality in open-ended development environments using toolkits for most of the common programming languages or Apex. So again, this is also the same thing as the difference between declarative and programmatic, which I did not understand for a long time. But declarative is when you basically do clicks. So anything we're talking about today in terms of configuration, what you can do in the user interface, versus programmatic means what a programmer, a developer, so you have Apex code, you have Visualforce, and the good news is that Salesforce is really moving in the direction of making everything easy to configure using the user interface. So as a beginner admin or intermediate, you are really well positioned to use Salesforce for long into the future, especially with the advent of tools you may have heard of like Process Builder. Okay, so that was a long explanation, but I hope it was helpful. Melissa Van Dyke is joining us. She's joining Admin Hour from Chicago. That's fantastic. Megan is loves her some Trailhead, which is fantastic. And I'd love to hear your tips for getting started with configuration. And I also took some notes I'm going to bring up here. But again, I'm really curious what you all have. Hey, how are you? So glad you're here. We are talking Salesforce today. Thank you for the hearts. I really appreciate it. We are helping people to learn and get started. And I have a document here I'm just going to open. There it is. And make sure you give Joey Bright a follow. Super fun insights into theaters and so forth. And I would encourage all of you to start periscoping as well. It's really fun and it's a great way to be highly interactive, but you guys need to interact more. So make sure you give some comments and questions on here and on Twitter as well. Okay, so we're gonna go to my Admin Hour document because I got some really fantastic responses ahead of time. Oh yeah, no problem. Yep, so when someone comments, you can just click on their comment and then you'll see their profile and you can follow them. So just like that happened there, it's super fun. Okay, so again, just to recap, if you're just joining us, my name is Missy. I'm your cloud computing expert here on Periscope. My organization is Longshore Consulting. And if you're watching on the web, the in-app on the mobile experience for Periscope is the best. You can tap the screen to give hearts, you can swipe and share, you can tweet out the link so it's easy for others to find and join us. And we're asking you to respond to the numbered questions on Twitter using the format Q1A1. So in other words, if you're responding to Q3, you respond with A3. And again, this is brought to you by Clean Your Instance on longshoreconsulting.com. You click on the 7-day challenge. I already talked about the Success Community and Power of Us Hub. And okay, we talked about what is configuration versus customization. So why would you configure and when would you configure are also questions that I would love to hear from you, as well as what tips you have. So great. Oh my gosh. So Atul says, first time on Admin Hour, definitely not the last. He's a Salesforce addict for the last 5 years and active on the Answers community. Fantastic. And let me get in here. Fabrice Cathala, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Salesforce architect from the UK. We love Chris when she dresses up as Astro, and that's a shout out to Chris as well. In case you didn't know, Chris Duarte made her own Astro costume, and it is phenomenal. She is so crafty. It is fantastic and amazing. I love what Fabrice said here in terms of declarative equals mouse versus programmatic equals keyboard. Configure equals providing user-defined values for features, modules, or functions. Amro, that's fantastic. That's really helpful. So one of the key things that I like about this is that, so that gets to the question of when to configure. So, and I think Amro really hit the nail on the head when he said it's a user-defined value. So a lot of times it comes in the format of fields, and we're going to talk about formula fields today because I got requests for that, and we're going to be talking about page layouts. So, oh great, oh yeah, Chris is amazing. Yeah, she is so crafty and funny and hilarious, and we all love her. And today is hashtag we love Chris. So yes, make sure you follow her. Hopefully there will be some antics today. So you really want to, before you do a lot of configuration in Salesforce, you want to think through how you're going to use the data that you get out of Salesforce, and you want to make sure that more than one person will use the field. And one of the things that I love on one of the articles that Melissa posted is that she wrote and posted and is on our Trello board on our website, is that you want to be sure you've talked with users, which I think is what Amra was just getting at as well. So a lot of times when I'm a Salesforce administrator or working with a client, people will email me and they'll say, I need this field and it needs to have this value and I need it yesterday, right? So I do not encourage you, yes, Amro totally agrees with that. So I encourage you to have some sort of process, right? And I'm really curious as to what other admins out there have for their process for determining what configuration you should have, right? So I agree that it should be totally user defined. That's fantastic. But then, like, how do you filter it down? So one of the key things for me has been, do more than one user need this field? Amro, you're exactly right. Outcomes and goals. So how do you want to use this data? How are you going to act on this data? What report is it going to go into? And one of the favorite things that I got from when I was asking, what questions people had was how, I asked, how can you get started with all of this? And Jody Wagner said that she started with the Hulk smash method, which was my favorite response ever. She said, I started doing Hulk smash. And so she said, I envisioned her doing this at her keyboard. And so she said, I started out in developer orgs. And I asked, why did you start in developer org? And she said, until I got comfortable learning how to configure things, then then I moved into a sandbox org. So I know I'm asking all of you to follow along and make configuration improvements as we go today, but I want to remind you to do that either in a developer org or in a sandbox org before you move into production. And that can be really helpful when you're working with your users as well. So you'll get a request. They'll say, I want a new field, I want a new page layout, I want to make a change, I want to remove something, and you can show it to them, excuse me, what it really looks like. That's one of the beauties of Salesforce, right? One of the things we love. And you can show it to them before you actually put it into production. And you always want to think through what are the implications of this going to be. And that brings us to our next question, which is what gotchas should we be aware of when adding fields and changing page layouts? So I'm just going to quickly check for responses here. Fabrice is reminding us to use Trailhead, which is fantastic. And Adam says Trailhead, Trailhead, Trailhead. For getting started with Salesforce configurations. And Rebe says all sorts of configuration from visual workflows, formula fields, approval processes, layouts, etc. That's fantastic. I love that. So, yep. I'm going to give that a retweet. That's fantastic. So again, there's so many choices for what you can do. So I just want to pause for 1 second and remind you how to set up a developer org in case you're new to it. So the number one way you can do that is on Trailhead. Yay! So of course, I have these instructions that Chris Duarte gave to me. Again, she's the editor-in-chief of Trailhead, and if you appreciate her, I really encourage you to use the hashtag #WeLoveChris today and just send her a word of thanks. But to get started, you do exactly what Fabrice suggested, and you go to trailhead.salesforce.com and you click the sign up button in the upper right to create a developer edition. And the important thing to know here is developer editions are not just for developers. All it is a free environment you can use to practice what you're learning. And that's a great opportunity to practice configuration skills. But you also need a developer edition to use Trailhead. And when you sign up, you'll need to provide an email and username. And I just want to go over this quickly because it's so confusing for beginners and intermediate people. And honestly, I was really intimidated for a long time. I think particularly as a woman, when I was getting started, 2009 was my first Dreamforce. I really didn't see a lot of women. I certainly didn't see a lot of women of color. I'm not a woman of color, but I'm just imagining if I were, I did not see a lot of women of color or transgender people in the developer zone. That's slowly changing over time, but I didn't see a lot of diversity represented there. And so I just want to be really clear that a developer org, the developer zone, it is for you. It is a great way to get started, and the community we have on the line right now is super diverse, and I encourage you to follow the other people here and to learn from, whoever works for you. That may or may not be someone who is in your exact same demographic, but in general, people in the Salesforce community are kind and are really here to help. So just, do your best, take it one step at a time, and, get that encouragement. That's why we're here, is to support each other. So again, when you sign up, you'll provide an email and a username. I was really confused by this by a long time. Your email needs to be a real email that you will have access to for the duration of your use of the developer instance. So I chose not to sign up with the email that was with my nonprofit organization I was at the time. I chose to use a personal email because, nonprofits, they're hiring, and staffing can change at any time. The username does not need to be real. This is how you know I love Chris Duarte, because the example usernames, because when you have a developer org, it just needs to look like a real name. An email, it must be unique. You cannot use your production name. Some sample usernames just get ready for this, are never gonna give you up at rickroll.com, fake username at fakeadyfakefake.com, I am totally awesome at awesomest.com. So we have Chris Duarte to thank for that lesson today, and I really encourage you to go into that. Okay, so let's take a look. Again, our Q4 was what gotchas should we be aware of when adding fields and changing page layouts? And our Q3 was what tips do you have for getting started with configuration? Okay, great. Great, and a tool said changes to Salesforce with clicks and drag and drop. Customization is Apex and Visual Force coding. Excellent. Rebe is not a nickname. Senior Salesforce, awesome admin since 2012. That's awesome. Okay, great. And Rachel is a sales ops Salesforce admin in Morrisville, North Carolina. We love Chris. I have much love for Trailhead. That's fantastic. Great. Okay, just want to make sure I don't miss any other awesome responses here. Again, shout outs for Trailhead. Okay, so Adam, who is fantastic, and I met him in person last week, says, make sure whomever conducts training for new users is aware. Send out a communication so that end users know about changes. That is a fantastic point, Adam. I absolutely love that. So yes, when you're going to make a configuration change in Salesforce, whether it's a page layout, a new field, getting rid of a field, etc., notify your users. So that's why I say it's really important to have a process. I work with organizations. I see a huge problem all the time of a proliferation of fields. So in other words, people will email and say, I need a field, and then they will just add them all to the layout, and then they won't get used. And so a hugely popular free app that I love is called Field Trip. You may have heard of it. It's totally free. I recommend you install it and use it. But then what happens is you'll run Field Trip, you'll sort the results, and you'll see, oh my gosh, we have all these fields on accounts or organizations if you're a nonprofit, and contacts that aren't in use, and then you just need to get rid of them. So again, have that process in place for how you should create new fields. And I'm going to write that down because it's so important and I want to remember it. Have a process in place for new configuration and communication and training. So if people are not clear that they need to fill out that field as a part of their job or something like that, it's not going to do anyone any good, right? So in other words, one person usually requests a new field, and then is it just that one person who's responsible for filling out that field? No, it's usually everyone. A well-defined change management process, release schedule, and communication training plan is a must. And so that's Megan. Fantastic. I love that, Megan. And if you have any articles or resources on that and is having the description and help text, yes, thank you so much, Megan. That was in my notes. Let me go back to that in a second. Oh, I love this. Rebe says, configuration is akin to sculpting clay. What are you making? That's fantastic. I love that. And then, let's see. Oh my gosh, so many great things. Okay. Fabrice says, position the most important fields frequently used on the top left corner of the page layout. So how you arrange things on the page layout is very important. Be sure to update training materials. That's fantastic. Get started with these awesome webinars. Thank you. That's fantastic. Multi-pick list and reporting. Must learn the difference of equal and contain/include when building reports. Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. Yes, that is so true. A4, group fields, thinking of the input process, how they are grouped, how important are they? Oh my gosh, you are so great. Okay, a tool, use is blank instead of is null. Is blank checks for null as well as white spaces. Wow, okay, that is fantastic. Okay, so now we're gonna get into formulas. So this gets a little more tricky, but but it doesn't have to be. It does not have to be tricky. Okay, so I had to take a sip of my tea for that one. So I have a number of resources for you, excuse me, on our website. There's the Trello board, so make sure you go to that. Okay, is blank versus is null. I'm going to read you exactly what that is because luckily I came prepared with my handout, and I'm going to read you the difference, even though Atul explained it great. Okay, so is blank determines if an expression has a value and returns true if it does not. If it contains a value, this function returns false. Is null determines if an expression is null blank and returns true if it is. If it contains a value, this function returns false. Important. Use is blank instead of is null in new formulas. Yep. So that's what he was telling us. Is blank has the same functionality as is null, but also supports text fields. Salesforce will continue to support is null, so you do not need to change any existing formulas. Okay, so that's a great tip. I want to point out that on our website, we have really fantastic videos from the Salesforce Docs team. So my role for you is that I want to make Salesforce easy and fun and manageable. And so I go through that fire hose of information on Salesforce and I really narrow it down for you. And so there's two on formulas. There's getting started with formulas and there's like formula gotchas and tips. So go into the Trello board and grab that and it says videos or YouTube or something like that. So go ahead and check that out. Rebbe says, fields layouts for me start with long-term efficacy. Will this meet business needs long-term or versatility? Yep, that's fantastic. One of the things that I think I struggle with is whether the formula field that I create should be on the page layout or not. Sometimes I just use it for reporting. So I think that's an important consideration as well. I don't want to clog up the page layout with unnecessary stuff if I really just use it for reporting. Does that make sense? But again, I still want to communicate out. I want to train people, and I want to make people aware of what a formula or what a field is doing. Now, I want to back up for a second and talk about getting started with formula fields. And I want to talk about two easy ways to get started with formula fields. Again, the blog post is on our website, and it's called My First Formula Field. And it was how I got started with formulas. So the way I got started with formulas is that I needed a field on a report, and this is before there have been some enhancements to reports that have made this easier, but I needed a field to be visible on an object that was from another object. And so I created what my friend Joseph told me was a reference field. And really all I did, and I walk you through step by step in the blog post, is I created a field that is just the value of another field. So there's no math involved. There's nothing complicated. All it does is refer to another field. So my point is that formulas do not have to invoke fear. They can be incredibly simple. And I really want you to try one right now. If you're new, if you're uncomfortable with them. And I also want you to try one, if you're more advanced, I want you to try one that's more advanced. So like is blank would be a great one to try out in a developer org, in a sandbox, because you should get comfortable with a lot of different formulas. Another formula that I know Melissa is probably interested in is the power of one. I would be interested if anyone has use cases for the power of one. I do not currently have a need for the power of one all that often, but I occasionally do. So I would love to hear more about that if anyone is interested. But there's a link to a blog post by Melissa. So in the Trello board, it's just at MVDSFDC. There's 3 blog posts that Melissa provided for us. So Melissa says using and the 2 pipes in your formulas, not and or, i.e. if is pick val status pending and is escalated equals true, false. So I'm going to write back and say, could you say more about that? Because I think she knows the difference of that. Could you say more about why, please? Hashtag admin hour. Great. Okay. So one of the fantastic things that I love in the videos that we posted is that it goes over how to keep your formulas clean. And that's in the gotchas video, I believe. So a few tips for you are to use the advanced formula editor. So when you go into creating a formula, first of all, you have to decide what type of text are you going to return. And then you have to, so in other words, is it going to be text? Is it going to be a number? Is it going to be currency, etc.? Then you go into the formula editor and you want to click on the advanced formula editor tab because you get more options. Then it also goes over how to make a really neat formula. And one of the things that I was reminded of today is that you can put comments in your formulas. And I love this. So this is really important when you get to the point where you're really doing anything that's really could look like gobbledygook in your formulas. So this happens a lot when I, so, you know, even if you have something like this, let me show you, you know, you might just want to go in and add in the description field, you know, always fill out the description field is what I'm trying to say. But you might want to say in the description field, this does this. Because 6 months later, you are not going to remember exactly why you set up the formula or how you did it or that sort of thing. So always do that. But then if your formula is way longer and way more complicated, you can comment directly in the formula, right? And that will really help you. And it will also be a gateway to coding. So Melissa and Kieran at Dreamforce this past year did an excellent presentation on workflow rules and formulas as a gateway to coding. The slides for that are posted on our website, so I encourage you to check that out. And basically, when you're putting together a formula that's more than 1 or 2 lines, you are really learning incredibly valuable skills. So take it slowly, you know, ask for help in the success community. But again, when you start doing things like commenting, that's exactly what you do when you're coding. Trust me, because I've been there. Okay, so, oh, and that's exactly what Adam just said. He said when you use the and the, so these parallel bars are called pipes. I learned that when I learned how to code with Girl Develop It. Really fun. He says, I think it's cleaner and reads more like English. Also gets you prepared to learn to code. Yay! So coding is fun. I don't want you to be discouraged or intimidated. But again, as a beginner, you just want to take one step at a time, ask for a lot of help. So I'm going to go into the and the pipe symbols and read those to you. And see, I think here we might just have the and. Okay, let's go. Okay. Let me just scroll this down for a second. Trailhead, of course. Okay. And. Okay. 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 Oh, got it. It's here. Okay. So the 2 ampersands, there you go. The 2 ampersands parentheses and. It says, evaluates if two values or expressions are both true. Use this operator as an alternative to the logical function and. And then the two pipes evaluates if at least one of multiple values or expressions is true. Use this operator as an alternative to the logical function or. So again, this may sound intimidating if you're a beginner or even intermediate Salesforce person, but what I want to say about that is one of the things that I love in the videos that we have posted from Salesforce docs is the same thing you do in coding, is that you start out by writing out what you're attempting to accomplish in plain English. So in other words, you say, they give this example of like a system administrator or Maisie should be allowed to change this value, if the opportunity is worth more than $1 million. Only those people, right? So that can be done with a validation rule, because otherwise you should get an error message. So you write that out on paper, and that's a real skill, right? To be able to put that out. And so even if you can't write the formula right away, first of all, you can get help. Hey, Profil, how are you? So glad you're here. So even if you can't write all the detail, knowing how to write that out on paper and knowing that, the person you're going to work with or on the Power of Us Hub or the Success Community is going to come back with something like this will get you a long way. So the most important thing you can do is build your confidence and your ability to ask questions. And then you can supplement that with Trailhead. But then again, my goal for you for Admin Hour is to actually implement it in your organization, either in a sandbox or, if it's appropriate to move it over to production. So Melissa gives us a great example here. She says, is pickval status pending and is escalated true, or is pickval status escalated? So again, she's using those pipes to say or, evaluates if at least one of multiple values or expressions is true. The other thing I would say is that starting out with reports is a great way to start to learn some of this logic and language. But the hardest part of Salesforce configuration is determining what you need and if you need it, and then how it will be used. So let me just go back into this. So Adam says, learning by doing, Trailhead is a great place. Adam, I would really love it if you have specific trails to recommend. And let's see. So Melissa says, because these functions are easier to learn and easier to read than the old and or statements. Okay, so it looks like those are more fresh. Great. And Profil sent out, wanted to make sure you knew about, oh, thanks. Oh, nice. Okay, thank you, Megan, for sharing. If conditional, nest it with and or by itself. Learn it, love it. Okay, so let's learn about, oh, thank you for sharing, Profil. I appreciate you. Okay, so let's learn about if conditional. Let's see. Okay. Sorry. Okay, if. Determines if expressions are true or false, returns a given value if true and another if false. So that's super nice. Again, two little letters, IF for if. So next is, what questions do you have about configuration? So for Admin Hour, so please go ahead and type your questions into the chat, excuse me, and let us know. So a couple of other things going with the who, what, why, that sort of thing is who should configure. So I'd love to hear from you in the chat. Who do you think should do configuration? And this is a little bit of a trick question, but I was watching the Salesforce administrators webinar yesterday and saw a really good reminder about that. So I just wanted to check in. So who do you think should do Salesforce configuration? So great. So Adam wrote a response and said, to the question, what questions do you have about configuration? And he said, what similarities does point and click development have with coding development? Spoiler at 10. Okay, Profil, yep. So you're saying an admin. Yep. And the trick there is that who should be doing configuration is a Salesforce administrator. That's absolutely correct, but it should be an identified user. So what I saw yesterday was making sure that it's not just a generic system administrator user, because that's going to be highly problematic later on, right? So in other words, my name is Missy Longshore, and I'm with Longshore Consulting. And so when I go into your or my nonprofit client's organization, I always want to be identified as Missy Longshore making the changes. Because when you have questions 2 years down the road, you want to know who to ask. So I loved that tip yesterday. I think that was fantastic because, again, this happens to me all the time. You have people asking questions about who did this and why. Just this week, I had questions about, I thought that was a great tip, again, from Dale. Again, I had really great questions this week about an API user, and it suddenly stopped working with form assembly. And so I needed to go back and see in the admin logs, had anyone made a change that would have sparked the change in the security token. And I was able to look at that past history and found out that no one had in fact made that change. Instead, form assembly had a new IP address that we needed to whitelist, if that makes sense. And so I was able to problem solve because I was able to go through and figure out who did it. So I hope that makes sense. Thank you for the hearts. Just a reminder, you can tap the screen to give hearts, and you can swipe up on Android. You can swipe left to right on iOS to share the broadcast on Twitter. And you can also follow me by clicking on the little Perry person, which I think is in this corner, because I don't just scope on admin hour days. I scope all the time about Salesforce stuff and cloud computing. So I'd love to have you join me other days. I also want to encourage you to follow each other and follow each other on Twitter as well. So when to configure, we talked about already, more than one person will use the field and other tips, and how to configure. Use the description field. This is your friend. You always want to use it all over. Okay, so what configuration tips have you implemented from today's admin hour? Again, we really want you to be an action taker, so really want you to do this. Have a transparency to your project with your Salesforce team, having only one admin deployed to production. Yes, I love that. Yes, having only one admin deployed to production would be so great. I cannot tell you how many organizations I work with who have 6 Salesforce administrators and they only have 20 users total. Let's keep that in mind. And so just, yes, I love that. I also have instances where a lot of people, will refresh sandboxes over each other. I don't know if it's true for all Enterprise Edition organizations, but with nonprofits now, we have 30 sandboxes. So there's no reason why you should be doing it. And guess how I prevent people from not refreshing over my sandbox? Guess. Can anyone guess? Guess what I use? That's right. I use the description field. I use it very clearly. I say, please ask Missy before refreshing this. And then I tell myself what I use it for. So I say, using to test, turning on lightning, right? Using to test turning off lightning, using, whatever. And I do, sandboxes, new sandboxes all the time. So you have 30 sandboxes if you have Enterprise Edition. Use them. Don't be afraid. Also, developer editions, I have probably 10 about. So use a new developer edition. The reason why I use a developer edition is because it has data. It's not configured specific to my org, so that's the problem, but it has data in it. So if I just want to try a formula that's really based on the standard Salesforce fields, or I'm doing something with a report, again, that's based on fairly standard Salesforce fields, I use a developer org because it has test data in it. So I hope that's a helpful distinction. So yes, similarities between point and click development with coding development is a ton. So Reve, that's fantastic. Don't be scared to get your hands dirty in a dev org. You own it so you can break it. That's fantastic. It's very hard to break stuff in Salesforce. So I would really love to know what you've implemented today. And yep, clicks before code always. Yep. That's fantastic. And we have, don't forget to visit our website for awesome free resources. I cannot tell you how many resources I put in there, you guys. I did not even have time to put all of this out there, but there's, creating formula fields, dynamic values, validation rules, cross-object formulas. You can even use some of that same language when you get to visual force and stuff like that. One thing to note about formula fields is that they can contain up to 3,900 characters. So that's why sometimes you'll hear people talking about the compiled limit and stuff like that. So I just want to be clear about that. Let's see. Using setup audit trail to go back in time and understand unexpected changes in behavior. Create a backup every other month. Fabrice, I personally do a backup every week, so I'm surprised to hear that. I'm wondering if he means a backup of the setup audit trail. Do you do a backup of the setup audit trail every other month? This is in addition to your weekly data backup, right? Okay. So yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea, and that's one that I'm going to implement right away is the setup audit trail. So the setup audit trail goes back, how far? Is it 6 months, I think? But it is a really invaluable resource, but it goes away. Yeah, oh great, okay. So Adam learned something. He's going to be using the pipes and the ampersands instead of or and in formula fields. And he's going to, whoops. Yeah, okay, of course they want my, okay. We do metadata backup each week and daily data backups. Yes, 6 months. Okay, the metadata backups. How do you do your metadata backups? I would love to hear how you do that because we were just talking about the setup audit trail. Do you go beyond that? Do you use Backupify? Do you use something like that? I would really love to know what you're doing for that. That would be fantastic. So I also want to let you know that our next admin hour is on May 5th. We're going to be talking about adoption because, again, that was really high ranking in the nonprofit survey that I did. But we're going to be talking about it in a very specific way, which is going to be focused. Well, of course, I'm happy to hear your feedback, but we're going to be talking about, oh, wow, awesome. Awesome. Okay. That's so fantastic. Thank you. So we're going to be talking about adoption, but we're going to be talking about it in the form of usability testing. I don't know how many of you currently do usability testing, but it's been the #1 key driver that I use for, getting more effective results in terms of adoption. It's a little bit of an agile technique. So look for that, but also any resources, thoughts, suggestions you have on adoption, things that really, really work, please send them to me. We really want to know, because, you know, it's something that everyone struggles with. And again, that's what I got in the feedback on the survey, etc. I also want to let you know that in the future, I'm hoping to do what's called a pass the cast. So what that means is that it won't just be me for the whole hour on Periscope. Instead, we're going to do a, like, what's like a train of, like, I'll host for like the first 10 to 15 minutes. Then I will pass it off to another expert who will speak for, you know, 10 to 15 minutes, and then another person, and then I'll come up and wrap up at the end. Does that make sense? So you'll have even more of that community feel and the interactivity going on. So you can have different people presenting. So if you are excited about that, let me know. If you're an expert, if you have something to share, please be thinking about that. You need to have a strong Wi-Fi connection in order to get good bandwidth, and you need to have periscoped a few times before so that I can, you know, watch your scopes and, you know, see that you're comfortable presenting on camera. So let's talk about that. But again, thank you so much for joining me. Remember to use the hashtag Admin Hour. Join us on May 5th. I will be putting out a blog post summarizing this using Storify, and we'll have the recording available for a full 24 hours. Unfortunately, the recording will only last until May 4th because Catch.me, the free service we've been using, is shutting down. So that's really sad. I'm going to look at transferring it to YouTube somehow so that we can continue to benefit from this information. But again, go to our website, longshoreconsulting.com/admin hour. Sign up for the 7-day challenge while you're there if you're a nonprofit. It's really great free advice. And I can't wait to see you guys on May 5th at 11 a.m. Pacific time, and we will get back to you. Yes, if the other person could post on the tool for metadata backup, that would be fantastic. I was not familiar with the name. It was something like Heroido. That would be fantastic. Let me see who that was. I think it was Megan. Megan, can you post the tool for metadata backup again? And again, follow each other on Twitter, and continue to share and enjoy the conversation. Okay, so I'm not seeing it, but again, if you post on Twitter, Profil, and you follow Megan, that would be fantastic. Also, Backupify is a good one, and I know there are other ones out there. So post it on Twitter. Yep, fantastic. Okay, thank you so much. I will see you all very soon. Take care. Have a great rest of your day. And remember, hashtag Admin Hour and hashtag We Love Chris. Thanks. Bye.